The Black Cauldron was released in 1985, directed by Ted Berman and Richard Rich, and is the 25th animated Disney film, and is based on the first two books of Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain fantasy series. The film follows a young boy and a group of misfits who embark on a quest to find a dark magic item of ultimate power before a diabolical tyrant can. The Black Cauldron is one of the most important animated Disney films of all time because of the reputation that precedes it. And that is all due to the fact that this nearly tanked the animation portion of the Disney company due to a mishandling of the production, all the way to it being released and being both a critical and commercial failure for the company. This was one of the biggest blows to the Disney company at this time, and this is during an era that we no longer have Walt Disney around, and everyone is kind of changing hands, trying to figure out how to keep this company afloat without him. And this kind of gets the blunt of the criticism when we look at this era that many call the dark age of Disney, but I like to call the transitional era, because there's a lot of movies here that really aren't that bad, and the dark age kind of exudes this idea that the stuff that was coming out was not good at all. And in fact, that seems to be the reputation of this film. That it's one of the worst animated Disney films of all time. And after watching it a few times, I really do not think that that is the case. I think that The Black Cauldron has mistaken identity because of the fact that it was a bomb and it nearly tanked the company. I think that it's gotten this kind of negative press that is kind of a little bit undeserved. At the heart of The Black Cauldron, though, it is a very generic and pretty bland film, and it's not very interesting to actually talk about, but it has things in it that are at least fun to explore a little bit, because this is one of the most ambitious Disney films that I have ever seen, mostly due to the fact that they were wanting to try to market this towards a different audience. Instead of focusing mainly on the family, which they had with all of their previous efforts, this was supposed to be more for teens. And I think that's a brilliant idea, honestly. This is the first PG animated Disney film, and it goes into some very dark places, and I think the concept and the idea of it is brilliant. However, as you watch the film, you can see that there were too many cooks in the kitchen. Nobody really had a full understanding of what this film was supposed to be. There were so many ideas for it that it eventually becomes an amalgamation of things, and you can ultimately see by the end of it why this movie both cost like over $40 million to make, and then only ended up making about half of that at the box office, and losing to, of all things, the Care Bears movie, which would already have been released multiple weeks before this movie was released. And that's pretty embarrassing for the Disney company as a whole. This movie has things that I really do like in it, though, and the first half, similar to how I felt with The Sword in the Stone, really did captivate me. I liked the animation. The animation in this movie is beautiful, harkening back to Sleeping Beauty, which is by far one of their most beautiful looking animated films still to this day. And it's in widescreen, and it looks great. especially due to the fact that we were using Xerox processing for so long with a lot of the animated features in the 60s and 70s. And to see this one be a little bit more traditionally animated was a breath of fresh air. And then also there's the use of CGI, especially for a lot of these special effects in the film, with the Black Cauldron itself and the Horned King and the animated skeletons near the end of the film. This stuff is absolutely gorgeous to look at, and I think that the animation needs to be more celebrated. In fact, there are things in this film that I think do need to be celebrated because they are really solid here. However, at the end of the day, this is a pretty boring film with very flat characters that are pretty uninteresting. And I think some of that is due, in fact, to this film being a adaptation of only 2 of the books of the Chronicles of Prydain, where it focuses on the character of Tauren as he goes through the hero's journey and eventually becomes a much stronger character by the end. We don't really get that development here, and it can cause the character to feel very shallow. And most of the characters are very shallow and rather uninteresting. And it makes it really hard to watch and hard to care for by the end, which is probably why a lot of people just cannot get into this film. But as I said, the first half really does have a lot going for it. From the beautiful animation to the epic story to the villain himself, played by John Hurt, who is fantastic as the Horned King, and he's so menacing, and I like the idea of a dark fantasy, and Disney had at least a good concept of this. If this had been reworked a little bit more, and there wasn't so many cooks in the kitchen, I think that this would maybe not have, been a success, but would have been looked at more fondly in the future. However, it's just bland, and I've said that multiple times already throughout this review, but that's ultimately what this film is, and it doesn't have much more going for it other than that was a good idea. I kind of like that. However, it doesn't work in this film. And I want to try to defend this film as much as I possibly can, because there were times where I really did enjoy watching this. However, by the end, I just didn't care really about what was going on. But the ideas are interesting, and that's what kept me continuing to watch this, because the ideas are really cool to delve into, and it's just very different from what we had gotten in the past. And I think that's cool in its own right. However, people just remember this film for basically almost destroying Disney. Basically remembered for its failings as a commercial success, and not exactly for the quality that's in it. I've seen many people talk about this film and just write it off as a bad movie, which you can. There is plenty of ammunition here to pick this movie apart. But I think there's a lot more here than people are giving the film credit for. Does it all work? Not really, because at the end of the day, I just find this movie kind of okay at best, but it's not the absolute disaster that people seem to use that narrative for, because it's not that bad, but it's really not that good either. However, it is an important film because it was getting Disney kind of back on track with the way they used to do things. This was supposed to be as ambitious as Sleeping Beauty was, and in a lot of ways, you see that ambition on screen, and it's really infectious. But due to this film, they were able to slowly start to transition into what would become the Disney Renaissance, which is by far the best era of Disney animation, period. So this is an important stepping stone and an important lesson for the studio at the time. And that's why this film should be looked at, and should be looked at not just for its failings, but for the little bits that it does succeed in what it was trying to do, which is very little, but still worth understanding. So anyway, guys, with all of that said, I'm going to give The Black Cauldron a 6 out of 10. This is a film that I really do have a fascination with watching. I want to like this movie. I want to champion it more. However, it is, at the end of the day, very bland, kind of uninteresting, but it has cool ideas in it. And the concept, I think, if it was shaped up a little bit more, could have actually worked. But at the end of the day, I do not think that this is a complete disaster, but I can see why it was a disaster for the company. But that is all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.